and there's Bruce supposed to be running it, and he doesn't bother turning up. Hello, everybody. I'm late because the power's just come back on it. Ian's here. Yeah, we are live, aren't they? All right. Let me send the link again to Bruce. But it's the same link as you're on, eh, Ian?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. He's a slacker. That's the trouble with
It
that,
works
right?
for me.
Yeah. Let me send it to him again. I'll do that right now. By gum, it's cold. There's snow on the mountains here. StreamYard says there's an error, but it's not his fault. Yeah, whatever.
It's never his
Well,
fault.
it's never his fault. How can it possibly be his fault? I wonder why. All right. I've sent that there. Maybe he's uh, in the wings. Don't worry, I've started it. I don't know. How are you, Ian?
Good. I'm sitting here playing with not quite an ESP32, but an ESP8266. I'm just trying to get it to work. I'm not going to say what I'm doing with an
No. I
ESP8266.
mean,
Can't
far
imagine for
be it
what
from you. Yeah.
what reason would I need an 8266? I can't
Oh,
imagine.
Don, I've just seen your Don. I'm Don Joyce. I've just seen your. It's Don. It's that one. That email address there. I'm going to send you a link right now, Don. Yeah. Have you? Are you trying today's updated firmware? Is all I'll say. If it's not working.
No, I've not tried. I'm
Okay.
trying. I've had one thing working, but
Okay.
on a different device, on an ESP32. But this is one. This is an 8266 I ordered today. So not today. I ordered a few days ago. So I'm trying the one that a very large YouTuber made
Yes.
a video about, just to see if that's working. But I don't actually know what device I've got here. So I'm it started. I could access the web service, but I wasn't transmitting.
Are you?
So I
So
set the
did you put the
GPS
phone on with
coordinates.
the Arduino IDE?
Yeah,
And all that
IDE.
stuff? No, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it came up with a web service allowing me to put in the GPS coordinates, but it didn't start sending signals that may or may not be related to
Local television
anything
or something. Yes.
TV or the BBC or something else.
Oh, and Peter's Nibs isn't here because we, it's definitely worth talking about. And
It's
obviously
funny
since
because
I
the,
made
the
that.
whole subject on spoofing in general is one I find interesting, because I'm really not sure the overall point of it, if I'm honest. Look, I think, people doing things near
How's it gone?
airports and stuff is a very silly idea, and it's going to
Yeah.
get people into a
Yeah.
lot of trouble. From
Yeah.
a generic user point of view, I don't see the point of spoofing. You either just comply or don't. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
taxing your car, or you
Yeah.
either do something or you don't do it. It's like, it reminds me a bit of, like, I'm going to make a fake tax disc to make it look like I'm taxed. Yeah, they can check online when we had tax discs in the UK, because that's going back a bit.
Don't you have them anymore? What do you have now?
No, it's all online now. So
So it's just purely linked to your registration.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Joe Copper comes along.
Yeah.
Wow. Gosh, what a brave new world. Hello there, Don.
Hey, how
very
are you?
nice to see you. You are now you have the correct hairstyle. You shall now assume the responsibility and position of Bruce.
Sounds
So,
good.
I don't know where the chap is. I'll look at my email again. So you very kindly emailed and said you had a RID story as well. What's your RID story, Don?
Well, it's kind of weird, because in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, this is a situation of remote ID actually working as it should work. And I know that's like, you know, people will start sending me letter bombs and stuff, but it, you know, so here's the situation. So it happened in Canada, at Canada's actually our capital, Ottawa, at the airport. Some idiot, and I think idiot is the right term, was flying an Air 2S literally at the airport. Like if you imagine Ottawa's a reasonable size airport, so it's got its terminal and some maintenance facilities, and there's a hotel. So I think he was at the hotel, but you know, there were two flights, one not at the hotel, one at the hotel. So he's flying an Air 2S. So, you know, there was no excuse of sub 250-gram drone or anything like that. So he was actually on the grounds of the airport at the hotel for the second flight. He pops this damn Air 2S up in the air, flies over the terminal area, or at least some buildings in the area, and I think he flew over a runway at 800 feet up above ground level. So, you know, none of this under 400 or anything like that. He wasn't flying at a reasonable height. He was, you know, above the ground at the airport. And it just so happens that the Ottawa airport is one of a few airports in Canada that is trialing, in concert with some local technology firms, a drone detect type of system. And so these guys who normally scan out to like 40 kilometers around had this drone in, you know, right in their nose. And so I don't know whether they called the cops or the Ottawa airport security. I think it was the cops, because they could determine the drone and they could determine the where the guy was. And they actually watched him on their scope or whatever drive from one location to another. So they basically had the cops arrive, tap on the guy's windshield and say, land the goddamn drone. And he did, and he was charged with, I don't know, half a dozen different violations, and charged with $3,000 Canadian in fines, and including his drone was not registered, which would be required. He did not have a pilot certificate required, flying, you know, in controlled airspace without permission, flying up the nose of the control tower. He narrowly missed a helicopter and an airliner coming into land. By narrowly, like, you know, he was in the air when those things were in the air, and so he got nailed good time. And incidentally, his fine was 3 times as much as the police drone that I always rattle on about that actually hit a plane. But, you know, nonetheless, here's a situation where, in my opinion, remote ID worked. I mean, we don't have remote ID formally in Canada, but of course the DJI drones, which is this one was, transmit their location and all the rest. And there are some technologies that work regardless of what kind of drone you are or anything else. So here's a situation, guy doing a bad thing, undeniably bad, and detected, and he was detected, and he was caught in the act and was fined and all the rest of that. I think that's a good thing for, you know, as opposed to, you know, oh, you know, this is some Karen chasing after some guy in a park. This is a bad guy doing a bad thing. No, I don't know whether he was bad, but at least at best an idiot doing a bad thing, and being caught. Discuss.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I suppose I have to try and be the devil's advocate and say, quite right. If you're near an airfield, you should be caught, found, and that's that. And there are plenty of technologies for doing that. You really would want to get into the head of the guy, though, wouldn't you? Why were you doing that? As you say, what on earth were you doing? What did you think was going to happen? I don't know.
And he claimed, all I know at this point is that he claimed ignorance. You know, I didn't know I couldn't do this. I mean, I don't buy it at all, not for an instant. But that was his defense.
I think it's interesting. I think that the argument for RID on consumer drones, it's absolutely fair. I think there's a point on anything COTS, off the shelf, Mavics, DJI stuff. I've never been uncomfortable with RID as such. We've entered this really weird area right now, is this forced compliance on all parts of model aviation, which Bruce has shouted about for years. And then this whole thing in the US, which is they're basically ending the ability for you to fly anywhere other than very specific sites. Remote ID is actually the headline for a number of issues, actually. And look, commercial operators, there are issues here with it. There's no question about that. You imagine you were filming on a set, you're filming for a film in an area that you're trying to get in and out as quick as you can because you've gained access for 2 hours, and then suddenly that's all being broadcast because you have to, and the pilot's location is there. There are issues around that and the tracking of that data. But for the hobby user, at the end of the day, as you say, a Mavic being flown in a silly place and that being picked up is good. And I don't think anyone would argue against that. It's the forced compliance in certain parts of our world, which, it just doesn't make sense. 1 gram difference. So if we take this 1 gram difference means the difference between you having to have this module on an aircraft or not. Yet what I do with that aircraft is irrelevant. So why is it based on weight and why is it not based on risk? And okay, let's take FPV specifically. So you could say you're flying in an area where you're maintaining below 50 meters, where you're at a site that is safe. It's a club site. It shouldn't need registration. It shouldn't need a requirement. Then what is the need to force compliance there? And the fact is, if you can even get a site, because if we look at what they've been doing with this whole mess on freers, it's they're literally trying to end the hobby through, if they can't do it through RID, they'll do it through you can't fly because there's no way you can legally do it.
Yeah,
you nailed it.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, because we've seen it's not about safety at all. This is softening us up for network remote ID. And the goal is, and I'm going to do a video on this, we cannot have drone delivery or pilotless air taxis as long as there are things in the airspace that they can't track and they don't know where they are and they've got no control over, because this see and avoid thing doesn't work with unmanned aircraft. The only way to be safe is to make sure there's nothing to avoid. That means getting all the recreational craft out of the sky, because if someone's flying in a pilotless air taxi and a recreational drone hits it, who's at fault? Because we must yield right of way to all manned aircraft. But if it's a delivery drone, do we have to yield right of way? Who has right of way? And if there's a collision and something happens, who's to blame? Is it the person sitting in an office somewhere who's responsible for 10 or 12 drones and can't pay attention to all of them, or the recreational flyer who suddenly finds a delivery drone appears out of nowhere and crashes into their own drone? This is just softening people up for the, I'm sorry, but you now have to pay to fly, and we're going to ground you if there's any pilotless air taxis or any drone deliveries in your area until they're gone. That's the ultimate end game. This is why, remote ID itself doesn't sound bad. It's going to hold people accountable. What, you got only those with something to, fear, have anything to hide, etc. But the reality is that it is not about that at all. It's about the next step, in which the FAA wanted to bring in, that was only stopped because the technology wasn't there. So we've got to look at it and say, well, if we allow broadcast remote ID to go ahead, we're basically saying, here are the keys to our toys, and we yield all control to you because we know what's coming next. That's why we have to take that move. And if it wasn't that, why would we need this ubiquitous remote ID when you're flying in the middle of your own huge tract of land where the signal can't possibly be picked up outside of that tract? It's about getting people accustomed to everything having remote ID and always having to be active at all times, because you never know when a pilotless air taxi or a delivery drone is going to have to fly over your property without your permission, and you could pose a danger to it.
Yeah, and don't forget the second use case, which has nothing to do with safety per se, but security, where you want to be able to prevent drones from entering a particularly sensitive area for any airport, prison, missile launch site. Whatever.
Yeah, but RID doesn't stop that happening. Doesn't stop people from doing that. And the thing is, I posted a thing on Twitter showing Yep.
Bruce, I think you missed the story that I was conveying just
Yep.
as you were joining. Basically, it was a situation that happened in Canada, Ottawa Airport. Idiot, to put a clear case on it, flying a largish drone, an Air 2S, at the literally at the airport.
Was he a policeman?
And they caught him, like with one of these detector systems, sent a policeman.
Do they offer him a job in the RMCP? RCPM, whatever it is, the police? Because he's got the talents for it.
He does. He does have all the talents for hitting aircraft, but he failed, so he didn't pass the test.
Yeah. But by the same token, we had a situation in the UK where someone was arrested for dropping drugs into a prison with a drone. There's no remote ID there. You don't need remote ID to catch these people. In fact, you're probably not going to be able to catch people with these things, because when you look at it, if you wanted to do something bad, you wouldn't use your own drone. You'd steal someone else's. And the thing that worries me is if you have a situation like drugs dropping into a prison, at the moment, the police have to be proactive. There's a drone. Let's follow it back to its takeoff point. Let's arrest the person. If you've got remote ID, they may just say, oh, remote ID, yeah, we'll get him later. Just let it, why waste our resources? We'll finish our coffee. We'll go and arrest him later because we know who he is. And then you find out that, oh, that was a stolen drone and you're arresting the wrong person.
Mitchell's exactly right there. DJI natively has remote ID, and
That's
for
correct.
years absolutely flatly denied that they were transmitting pilot position and aircraft position in the clear. And our dear old friend, who you should never cross, discovered that, and people decried him for banging on about that. So that was native in DJI, because they were selling the gear to the airport, so they were playing in both camps. But I think, to me, the biggest bugbear, I'm sorry, I'm dragging away to my own rant here now, aren't I, having said this, is that RID does not improve air safety in any way at all. It's one of the spins that it's being used is for air safety, and it's on an ISM band. Now that is just nuts, because people will be able to transmit all sorts of other things. I don't know if you've seen some fantastic images that people are putting in. If you're looking at a signal on a scope, people are putting images down scope on HF and all sorts of places to jam or burst stuff where they can. So there's going to be multiple ways in this within this ISM band that are completely legal for you to transmit stuff that's going to blow it out of the water. So it's just ill-conceived. I'm going to stop ranting now. It's just ill-conceived from the very beginning.
So I've got an interview set up for next week. Well, not set up yet, but it's agreed upon for next week with the CEO of the company that runs this security system at the Ottawa airport. And I'm going to ask him, I'm going to put him on the spot. Like, what would have happened if this guy had, a dozen spoof things out there spawned all over the place? Would your system have been able to, go, oh yeah, that's the real one, and there's the guy that's transmitting? Or would you have this police officer driving around to all the Tim Hortons coffee shops, to see who it is that actually has a control? So, would his system have caught him with spoof, and would it have caught him if it wasn't a DJI drone?
Well, you'd hope that it would have a way of first detecting the RID signal, then confirming it with a camera. Point.
But this is the bit I'm confused about. So if we talk about spoofing a minute, so RID is open data. It's open source. We'll use the term open source, okay? So it's open data. So you're going to provide a UAS ID serial number. Now that serial number is going to be provided and logged by the FAA, and then you're going to have the rest of the UAS details. So on a DJI drone, that will be fairly straightforward. That will just be the detail it provides. On a drone that you retrofit with RID, you'll just put in the name, whatever else. But how is there going to be a lookup that serial number is valid? So that module has a serial number. Well, I can spoof a serial number in 10 seconds. So how do we know that serial number attributes to A, something, B, is there a log of that serial number and where that serial number was sold and who to, C, if you're selling that and logging that, so who's putting that data in? Is there going to be a website that you have to register the module on before you could use it? The bit I don't understand here in this whole thing is a module transmitting a serial number and its coordinates. The serial number means nothing. It doesn't. People talk about these modules have to be certified. Well, you can have a this, which I've got in my hand, which I could put completely valid data in, and it's no different to the actual module. So there are elements of this that just don't make sense. It's easy on the DJI stuff because if the law enforcement get a serial number, they can actually go to DJI, and DJI will probably hand that data over. That's a reality. That's what happens when you have a product which you register with the manufacturer. That if there was a serious enough issue, DJI are going to give them that data. Let's not think that's not going to happen. But with a module, it's not going to tell them anything other than the data that's in it, and that data is only as good as it's put in. So the DIY aspect of it is just nonsense. It just doesn't make sense.
The Squidrid chap very cleverly has taken the serial number ranges that the manufacturers have declared for every single type that has been given approval. So we're not talking about, there's only 3 to choose from and they come out at random. It's every single possible serial number for every single approved device. And let's face it, we're going to be nefarious about it. You've only got to cause this confusion for a few seconds, haven't you? And that shuts the airport. Even while everyone's thinking about it, you've just got to. Sorry, I haven't used the power of speech. I'm so angry about it.
I looked at how I'd do this if I was the FAA, and what I'd do is I would make sure that any system that was supposedly operating in a mission-critical environment, like an airport or a critical piece of infrastructure, it would have the technology built in that when it picked up a remote ID signal, it would then send the serial number of the remote ID to the FAA, which would then return a registered or non-registered status. So you could soon say, you assume that if it wasn't registered, it's probably spoofing. Right. But what you can do, and this makes it even more worrying, is you wander around town with your app, you collect genuine, valid serial numbers for remote ID broadcast, and you use those. So now you're incriminating innocent people with your spoofing. And then when the FAA tries that verification, it verifies, oh my goodness, this really is a drone.
True.
Because it's, it's a
true
pitiful
one from this area.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, when I made that little video and things we did with Ian before about Dublin, I'm very reluctant to talk about these things because it's safety and security, and I don't think one really should over-egg it too much. But when it is this easy, if I can do it.
And where's the safety and security? Where are all these national secrets that are being lost? Where are all these deaths and injuries and property damage that we're supposedly preventing with remote ID? The case, it's a solution that's still looking for a problem because we just haven't seen it.
And is directly linked. People have to remember that this is the reason it's on our ISM band where it is and the frequency we've chosen. DJI are okay. They've got SDRs on board. They can do whatever they like. They can be on East Coast Radio, FM, all the time. But for one of the UTM companies bought into a module manufacturer in China because right from the get-go, they wanted to sell the devices. They're no longer in business, but that's part of the problem. It's driven by what some first movers did. And we've ended up with this ridiculous setup. And I don't think it's particularly right. I don't think anyone should be going around spoofing stuff. I don't think you should even be moving your location when you're operating commercially, but you should be jumping up and down against what a pain this is. Because equally as you can spoof stuff, as Bruce has just suggested, it's super easy now to set up a receiver and just gather the data, gather in that data.
Those most vulnerable to all the problems are the people that are flying legally and legitimately with remote ID. They're the ones that are going to they're going to be incriminated by the bad actors. So it's going to be, I expect people that have got drones to get knocks on the door from the police saying your drone was identified flying in this area at this time and drugs were dropped into a prison and prove you weren't there. That's what's going to happen. That's why people who are quite happy to comply and think this is not a big issue, they should start reconsidering that position, because it could be something that gets you in hot water through no fault of your own. In fact, through your compliance, you could be incriminated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mitchell
And by the way, it doesn't even have to be
point.
a gathered, something's pulled out of the air. It could be just out of the database, and well, I was 3,000 miles away at the time. Well, yeah, but you could have flown there, right? Let's check this in court, and then you're in a whole pile of hot water for nothing.
Yeah, remember, it should be their job to prove you're guilty, not your job to prove you're innocent. But if you spent a night at home on your own watching Netflix and somebody did something bad with your serial number somewhere nearby, how are you going to prove it wasn't you? And, you end up with a big fine or worse because you complied with remote ID.
Well, we're okay because we're always on live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I've demonstrated I could be flying over Tuckaroa right now, for all that any people knows. Mitchell made a very good point. People are going to leave their DJI or whatever model aircraft on inadvertently in the back of their car on the way back from the flying field, and it's going to fire off the rig stuff left, right, and centre. It's in the UK recently, the CAA said to people, please don't just turn on your drones when you come through the airport. But I'll almost bet you that no end of customs people have said, well, prove it, put the battery in and see if it switches on. And every time they've done that in the terminal, it's fired the thing up. And yeah, what off goes all the alarms.
There was an interesting set of comments on one of my videos from a guy, I think it's the Netherlands. They make an ornithopter drone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they want to sell it into the USA, but it has to be SRID compliant now, standard remote ID. And there's no off-the-shelf standard remote ID solution, because your transmitter has to broadcast its location to the drone, and then the drone has to rebroadcast that. So you can get broadcast remote ID, but you can't sell a ready-built system with with the module. You've got to sell it with standard remote ID, and there's nothing for them. They have to build it themselves, roll their own one out and do it. Massive extra cost for them if they want to be able to sell into the US now.
It's a complete cluster, and I'm very glad that it. I wonder. I was thinking this before we started, when I was in the dark and the cold. I wonder if the CIA has noticed your campaign, Bruce. I wonder, or the FAA, I should say. I wonder if anyone's actually taken note and realised that the community has woken up.
Well, it's very sad that their presence on Twitter is right only. I mean, they don't listen. They only just basically for announcing stuff. It's not for interacting with the aviation community in any way, shape, or form. They just don't respond to tweets. Because I've tweeted them and said, hey, what's your response to this? How are you going to mitigate this particular situation? Not a peep. And we should.
They're on threads now.
Yeah, probably.
Well, and the other thing I should ask about, I see FRIAs are beginning to be authorized in the US. So that's your 1 in 4,000 golden tickets for those that have got it. Well done, whoever it is. Still a lot of time to go. What's the situation in Canada now, Don? Has everything settled down? Are you all flying again everywhere, or how's it with your flying fields now?
So with the MAC fields, I know nothing. I'm not a member of MAC. I fly drones, not RC aircraft. I haven't heard anything from anybody formally in the MAC organization since, I don't know, maybe January, something like that. I know Tim I know
he is.
Tim
Yeah.
the plane man probably does know or might know, since he's in the MAC organization. So yeah, but as far as I know, they are not up and running. They are not flying, and thousands, hundreds, if not thousands, of RC aircraft people are going through the process of registering their aircraft, becoming pilots, getting their certification, and flying, in that manner. And the difficulty is for those who are in controlled airspace, and in other words, anywhere near a city, they're in a lot of trouble because they have to get the advanced exam, which is a stupidly bastardly exam to get. And for anybody like flying large drones large aircraft over 25 kilograms, or gliders that are, better flown over 400 feet, they have to go through all sorts of crazy hoops and jumps to get through it.
Yeah, and I've heard Tim made the point. I've sent you a link, Tim, just in case. I have heard, Little Bird tells me that some of the funding for RID in the UK has been withdrawn. So maybe, the CAA's seen the light there as well, because the UK CAA initially for a long time said, yeah, we're not going to do that. It seems like Canada did as well. But
Yeah,
I
maybe
think-
some people felt their collar to...
yeah.
Let's be realistic. In the UK, they won't fund it. They will try everything they can to make private business fund it. The UK government wouldn't. They won't even fund proper support for the airport. If you look at proper security, or the British, we just don't fund it. It's not going to happen over here. It's just not going to happen. RID will end up being traffic management, UTM. That's what's going to happen over here, because they'll get someone else to pay for it. That's what will happen. Traffic management, UTM. That's what's going to happen over here, because they'll get some.
Oh, I don't know. It's a Canadian
There he
takeover,
is.
but in a strange way.
I'm here.
Hey,
G'day,
Tim. Sorry, I just got an urgent text from my sister. I may not be paying attention for a moment.
All right. I thought I had to answer Don's question, so I thought I'd jump in about Mac, because Mac is absolutely flying. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of Mac members who now have the Transport Canada RPAS pilot certificate and are flying at their clubs. Everybody's now basically has to fly under the same rules that everybody else had to before. There's no exemption, so there's no special rules. But Mac has done this amazing effort to go and recertify all of its existing flying field. Well, most of its existing flying field, something like about 80 to 90% of them, except for some that had previously been grandfathered in, where they were, for example, in controlled airspace, but the local airport knew about it and they were fine with it. Well, now they just can't fly. Or there's a couple where there's fields like that have been approved by Mac, but you've got to have an advanced pilot certificate to fly there. And even if you do, you can't just fly your home-built jet, turbine or whatever it is, a huge warbird or whatever, because it won't be certified. It's not certified, but there's an approval thing you've got to have. So there's a whole bunch of unhappy people at Mac because of that.
But it sounds like, Tim, sorry to interrupt, that they're flying, but only flying not because of anything that Mac has done per se. I mean, the certification of their fields, it's like, what's that?
Well, now if we get into that, now Mac's doing some funny things. There's some weird politics, like I think I mentioned before. There's a thing called the Cricket Club that seems to be very interested in competition, and they have a big problem because they can't do like their aerobatics competitions at their international level and that kind of thing, because it just doesn't work under the regs and stuff like that. So but that aside, so Mac has a set of rules, and they've got a whole set of rules, and there's an interesting problem now, because there's a rule that seems to say that Mac members are only allowed to fly at Mac certified fields, regardless of whether they also have they have to have a Transport Canada pilot license that lets them fly anywhere where it's legal to fly according to Transport Canada. And in fact, I just read on one of the forums today that there was a case of somebody a bit of a disaffected member, who had gone out and flown at a location that they claim is perfectly legit, and they had they'd done the approval with the Nav Canada drone app, and they had their pilot certificate, and they flew, and it was legal, and Mac heard about it and revoked or suspended their membership as a result, because they were flying at a non-Mac location, which is, I mean, if that's true, And so I'm trying to be careful about how I say that, because it was a forum post, blah, blah, blah. But if that's true and that's what's going on, it's a very dangerous precedent. And effectively, it's going to be like, again, an us and them thing. It's going to be saying, you know, MAC members are only allowed to fly at MAC fields. If you want to fly at a MAC field, you have to be a MAC member. And all those nasty drone people, well, they're evil and they're who caused the problem, and don't talk to them and don't let them fly here. And it's all just bad.
That is bad. That is very bad. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, it might be tied into the insurance requirements, perhaps, that the insurance says, well, you're only insured if you're flying at the field, but then so what? You're not insured if you're not flying at the field.
Very well be. It's all been very confusing. When I first started doing this, and remember this only a couple of years ago, I looked at that, and the MAC rules were very unclear about, as a MAC member, are you covered by MAC insurance if you fly somewhere else? It seemed fairly clear to me that you are. But now it seems a lot like, well, maybe you're only covered at a MAC field, or a MAC, and they have this thing called personal flying fields as well. So someone can actually go to MAC and say, I want to certify my acreage or my cottage by the lake, and get a special certificate for that, to let you fly there, and then be covered by MAC insurance. But if someone is a MAC member and flies at a MAC field like I am, and also has an advanced pilot certificate and has their own insurance like I do, I should be able to go and fly, if I'm not flying at a MAC field, fly somewhere else, and I'm not flying the MAC, as far as I'm concerned. That should be perfectly fine. But maybe MAC has a different view of that.
But then what happens to a commercial operator? Because on Sunday I go and fly my Tiger Moth, and I go and fly it from the MAC field, and all's good. And on Monday morning, 9 o'clock, I'm off to do a commercial job. So, and I've got all my tickets. So what happens?
The guy at the field, at the MAC field just last week, who was busy flying his jet planes, and having a lot of fun, and crashed one in the field, and it ended up in a bunch of little bits. Would be great video for one of Bruce's videos. And then whipped out his DJI Mavic 3 to practice flying his drone, because he uses, guess what? He bought it for work, and he's actually using it literally for work, to do inspections of rural properties, which is his job. And so how would that work? Is that, he's not allowed to do that because he's a member of MAC, or, I'm not sure I understand how that would work, but it seems perfectly reasonable. There's recreation, and there's, your professional job. Shouldn't they not be able to, depending on what you're doing as an individual person? Or once you join MAC, you're not allowed to fly drones in any
form.
Well, that was the problem I had with our national model flying body. I'm always effectively supposed to be operating under their rules, even when I'm operating on my own property, in my own environment. I still have to follow their rules, and I don't see that as being a reasonable position to take. People, when I'm flying with the benefit of their services or their insurance or whatever, then I'll follow their rules. But if I'm getting no benefit at that time from the membership, I should be free to do what I want to do. But apparently, can't do that.
Yeah. So that's still settling out. MAC is, they're still working on things. They're trying to figure out how to deal with gliders who obviously want to fly above 400 feet, and jet planes who probably fly above 400 feet without even blinking and without even thinking about it. The thing that I wonder about is how many MAC pilots or planes have a barometer in, so they can even tell how high they are. I'm kind of suspicious.
There's probably an airline pilot there. They can judge these things so accurately. 6 inches from the port motor. They're pretty good at what they do. But it shows you how the hobby's being dismantled, isn't it? I mean, everything is gearing towards, and look how quickly the benefits of a national model flying body can be wiped off the map by the regulator when it suits them. Now everyone has to operate under those conditions that apply to all, drone operators. It is just our connection to the air is so tenuous, and it's not at all beyond the realms of possibility to believe that one day the hobby will be cancelled.
Effectively or literally, yes.
Yeah.
Where is it? I'm just trying to find it. John did a really good video. You guys have to, I suggest you go watch it if you haven't seen it, reviewing the new proposed and you, not just you, everybody watching, the new Transport Canada, if you could find a link or pop a link in, it'd be great. The new regulations from Transport Canada. Oh, really good video. It's really, really great. And it's very interesting what Transport Canada is proposing. And I just wanted to point out two things. One is that although they pay an awful lot of lip service to recreational drone use in this kind of consultation, which is a great thing, and I think you, Don, have had something to do with that. That's been really great that they actually say they're listening to us. But if you actually read the content, they have done absolutely zero for recreational drone use in terms of what they're suggesting. So I'm not sure if it's helping that much, or are they just sort of saying, yeah, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, until, yeah, you just can't fly anymore.
Until you tell you what you want to hear.
The second thing, though, remote ID, is that these new regulations have taken like years to come to the point of final consultation, and then they're going to basically start going into practice sometime next year and fully implemented in 2025. There is zero, not one single mention of remote ID anywhere in these regulations.
Exactly.
And regardless of whether you think, as some of you who are a little cynical might, that just wait, it's a matter of time. But, you know, this is government, and a matter of time is a long time. So if something's going to happen, the last time the regs were changed was 2019. The next one's going to be 2025, so 6 years. So even if they start thinking about remote ID now, it's going to be 2030 sometime before we even get there. My bet would be that Canada is doing kind of what they did with ADSB, which is, you know, wait till you see what happens everywhere else, and then decide whether the people who have gone in and sort of implemented these regulations, whether it actually worked before deciding to do something or not do something. I'm hoping, anyway. We'll see.
Well, they're certainly taking the slow wallet draw approach, and as you said, it's taken since 2020, so a 5-year end-to-end period to get this pile of regulations out, and it's almost entirely. There's a couple of beneficial things in there, but it's almost otherwise it's entirely for large commercial drone operators.
You notice how much glare is coming from the top row, from the top of the heads.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even on the bottom right, I was just thinking I need to get a skull cap or so. I'll very quickly get my shaver out or something to. I feel, you know.
And then we need to get plaid shirts. I don't think I own a plaid shirt.
Oh, sorry about that.
I do, but I don't wear it. But yeah, you're right.
The plain man shirt, but I wasn't even going to jump in. I was honestly expecting it was going to be the same old boring, four old guys chatting about remote ID over and over again. But you guys
again and again.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's what's it? The Fat CC's Ridge Fiasco to the south. Yeah, and that is what this is going to prove, and it needs to be remembered that it was a vendor that really, two vendors, DJI and the people that bought the module company, that were pushing for this, and it's definitely just shiny thing. Let's do that. That seems like a good idea. Oh, we can do that. We can do that. Yeah. Whilst also saying actually, and it was that module buying company that wanted network remote ID. That was their big idea as well. And
well, I mean, if you think about it, if you have a product that you can't sell, the best thing to do is make it mandatory. So, and then you can sell a couple.
But they bought, at the time that they started this discussion, is when they bought into the Chinese module manufacturer. It's just been a terrible thing. And as I say, nobody here is not for safety, and I think that's also something the regulators seem to be missing. Nobody wants a dangerous sky. Nobody wants that. And we. Which UTM is using worldwide? There's no worldwide UTM yet, and that is another problem, because there's no standard for how each UTM will talk to another UTM. There's no no single UTM should rule the world. There shouldn't be one to rule them all, because, and that's what Wing and Amazon want to be, that UTM, so that they can delay the competitor's delivery drone by 5 or 6 seconds or whatever. That's why there's a bit of a rush to get in there. We went from having 3 UTM companies not many years ago to having, I know at the last Air Traffic Congress, 90 companies turned up with their idea of what a UTM should look like. So that's another complete balls up about to happen. It is discussing UTM at Drone Enable. Yeah, I've gone off. Oh, and here's the link. I'm going to post the link here. Sorry, I've gone off track. Everyone else talk. Just ignore me. Ignore me. I'm too wide.
Were you talking? I didn't. I had.
Yeah. Who is this bearded man in the corner?
Well, I didn't mention also
it can't be wrong.
The regulations that are being proposed in Canada is also going to introduce, if you saw Don's video, a way to fly beyond visual line of sight. My God, that acronym is horrible. BVLOS.
Extended VLOS. Yeah.
No, not extended VLOS. I mean, I understand that it's got that as well, but there's a beyond visual line of sight and a whole nother level of certificate that comes with it, which you'll have to have your basic and then your advanced, and then this
and
thing.
Then there's another one. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called either, to be honest.
You've got to have the rock as well. But the interesting, I just posted a link. A company in Edmonton in Canada called Pegasus, who's into the commercial drone side of things, has posted this thing about BVLOS changes. And they're suggesting that in order to be able to fly BVLOS, you're going to have a detect and avoid mechanism in your drone / plane. Of course, they sell one. And yes, and this seems to be inside information because I can't find any reference to this in the regulations or in
it's not in the regulations. The only thing that's in the regulations is that the current, the one that they're proposing is only applicable outside of controlled airspace, so Class G, and you have to be in a sparsely populated environment, which is less than 5 people per square kilometers.
20.
Yeah. Well, no, it's 5. I think it's 5. Like, you have to be in the boonies. I consider myself to be in the boonies, and when I checked the map, apparently I'm practically in an urban area. So yeah, there's the expectation that there's detect and avoid, but it's not really because of anything active. It's more because you're just so far out in the middle of nowhere that there's nothing to detect or avoid.
So these regulations formulated by people who run training institutions, because you have to have all the certification and all these extra qualifications to do these things. And I wonder who is going to teach these people how to fly BVLOS, because currently you can't do it unless you are a rogue hobbyist. So one would think there's a great number of jobs there for rogue hobbyists that have already done a lot of BVLOS work.
Actually, earlier today, I was on a Transport Canada sanctioned webinar. It wasn't like a live stream, but this company came up with this absolutely brilliant way to train people on drones like the Reaper military drones and things like this. So what they did is and Transport Canada was like freaking out. So here's what they did. They bought a commercial aircraft of one of these very small single pilot kind of things, very small, but basically the same size as the Reaper. So I don't know, 25 feet long, something like that, 25-foot wingspan. They have a pilot in it, and that pilot is considered the pilot in command, but the whole thing is remotely flown. And so what they've done is they train people on how to fly remote BVLOS and all this kind of stuff using an aircraft that is effectively a drone with some poor sod slapped in there going, oh my God, there's a mountain, you know.
Wouldn't it be easy just to give them a Mini 3 249 grams, you can fly BV loss. It's not against the rules.
You would think, but these are larger drones. They're doing exercises that are considered more, I'll say, applicable to, cargo drones and military drones, things like that.
Yeah, so this BV loss isn't going to allow for drone delivery then, is it? Because in a sparsely populated region, you don't have much business.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Here's your
some
case of beer, and that's it. Yeah.
This Cassia system, if you have one of these fitted here in Afrique du Sud, you can fly to 15 kilometers right now, and that's detect and avoid. And that we've had that for years now, for probably 5 or 6 years. So this is the way to get BV loss flying here. And, I have to say it that it's a little bit of a mystery why the rest of the world's taking so long to start playing BV loss properly. And yes, the whole of unless you're in Cape Town, Pretoria, or Joburg, then everywhere is sparsely populated here. And I should think Canada's, we've got smaller cities and things, but I should think Canada's even worse.
The real use cases for this sparsely populated stuff is power line inspection and pipeline inspection and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or farming, agriculture. There's lots of farming.
You're right. Yes, and farming and agriculture. Yeah. And that's going to be huge for those guys because people have been prevented from using these agricultural sprayers and stuff. So they've done two things. They used to have a rule that said you cannot have a payload that is a biohazard. Well, pesticides, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kills bugs. Yeah. Is that a biohazard? So they took that rule out, and then they put all these rules in that allow people to fly larger drones, like up to 150 kilograms, and fly them BVLOS. So, I mean, it's not for the recreational folks at all. They actually claim that it would enable FPV flyers. It's like, are you out of your freaking mind? This is madness. Yeah,
we don't need enabling. We just break the rules.
Yeah, it's easier just to break the rules and get a fine of $250 than to even consider going through all this stuff. Not that I'm endorsing that, but
No, yeah, it's again, it's all driven by commercial interest, isn't it? If I've got a thing that I want to sell that does a thing, and I need to move some stuff out of the way, then that's what I do. And it always brings me back in my mind to Chris Anderson of 3D Robotics saying, no, everyone's going to get out of the way. We're the great new thing. Everything, Silicon Valley very much thought it was going to change the way the sky worked because we're Silicon Valley and we can do what we want and the world will follow. And they've been very, very surprised. As a lot of, we're noticing a lot of AAM, UAM companies are pushing back their dates.
Well, you know what? They do that though. Look at Uber. I mean, all they needed was a bunch of money, and hey, listen, we're a tech company, and they've changed the world as far as taxis, and and to what good? I mean, I can't see it myself. I still don't understand their business model or how they make any money, but. They've changed.
Well, you can't say that they've done it without resistance. There's massive resistance to ride sharing down here from the established taxi bus operators and stuff like that, municipalities. But they're pushing on, and just, of course, all the blame goes on to the poor driver, doesn't it? He's the bloke that gets his collar felt. Uber gets a big tut, we don't allow it. But the bloke driving the car is the bloke that feels the force of the law, not the actual big company. And to a certain extent, the drone industry has been playing in that. And Deep's talking about India. India is a terrible fun fight for made in India drones that are nothing of the sort coming in from China, and lots of political interests shoring up the companies doing that. India is a very interesting case in point. Now, I am again ranting on. What else have we seen this week that we should? Has DJI launched anything yet, or are we still in waiting mode?
No, it's all actually quiet. The bubble has well and truly burst. You know, if you look at the whole industry, there's the rumors of DJI A2, A3. Like that's DJI just filling out their product stacks. They're obsessed with this. We're going to shove as many cameras onto a drone for sensing and seeing as they can. So it'll probably just have 2 cameras, 1 inch, 1/1.3.
When are they going to put a camera on the back? Why?
It won't be long. It's gonna come in it. Yeah, it won't be too long.
And a little beeper that goes beep, beep, beep when you're reversing. That'd be
Yeah,
handy.
reversing.
It
They're in a
would help
weird
me.
position as well, and I'd love to know the numbers because I can't imagine the Inspire 3 is sold particularly well. You know, they've just pushed out. I saw the other day new versions of their gimbals for their phones. You know, this is that $99 product. You know, what margin is there on a $99 product? If you take out the dealer, right? You know, they must be making $90 a few quid on them, you know, and yeah, the whole industry though is quieting down. You know, we're seeing FPV quieting. There's some new products around the corner that I do know about, but it's nothing exciting. There's nothing. You know, we had this big buzz last year. You know, FPV 2022 was definitely the year of FPV. We had a big shift in the technology of FPV. You know, we'd had DJI play with digital, and they did a good job. And we had HT0 around, but we then had Avatar, DJI Vision 3. HT0 has come on a lot, but that's not going to be every year. The next cycle of this is probably. Well, I don't think it'll be here again. You know, we're now in the digital age of FPV. That's it. The systems may improve, but
analog for the win.
Analog for the win for Bruce. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I think the drone industry has got a real tough few years ahead because I don't know what there is to get anyone excited. And for those of us who've been in it a long time, you're bringing in a lot of new people. That's good. You know, FPV is really good for bringing in people. People see this footage on Instagram. They see these people. But it's also worth remembering 90% of what they're doing is fully illegal. Ignoring remote ID, ignoring all of that, you know, it's predominantly, and I'm not saying it's dangerous because it isn't, but a lot of FPV pilots are climbing into abandoned buildings, which are fantastic flying locations. But number one, they're trespassing. Number two, they shouldn't be there. And it makes great footage, but it's
just abandoned buildings. What about
It's only trespassing if you're told to leave and you don't.
The clouds, you know, flying up through the clouds or over through mountains or, or you know, fully illegal. Most of the good stuff, absolutely.
Is fully illegal. And it's hard to bring people into that and say, look, you know, you can do this. What you could do is you can come and break the law with me, you know, and it's hard. And I think the drone industry's got DJI, obviously the gorilla. I think we'll see some contraction. I don't see how, you know, you see an Autel bang out all these drones to try and compete with DJI on the commercial industrial side. People aren't buying them. They're not, the same problems exist for Autel as they do for DJI. They're Chinese. The problem isn't DJI don't make a good product. DJI make the best product in the marketplace by a country mile. You know, DJI are not the company they were.
A sparsely populated mile.
10 years ago. Yeah. But it's sparsely populated, but they're still, you know, if you think the great money today is, you know, and I know for those who fly the DJI stuff, you can buy it. It just works now. It's so good now. It works. It connects to the phone. I had a really interesting conversation with someone actually the other day on this new controller that DJI is selling with their drones. The little one, grey one with a built-in screen. And for those who don't fully understand, the DJI RC, it's called, I think costs on its own about £220, or with the drone, it's a bit more money. And then you got the RC Pro, which is like the higher end version of the same remote, which is like £1,200. There's something like $800 on pounds between the two models. Yet this 231 is enough. It just works. And everyone who buys it just says it's brilliant for the money. And that's the point DJI have got to. It's the iPhone 8 territory is probably the term I'd use of it's all good now. And I don't know how many people other than you use People are not upgrading. People are
No.
not buying
That's
stuff.
the same. It's everywhere. People aren't upgrading their smartphones every year. People
No.
aren't upgrading their computers every year because they can't afford it, and because the stuff they've got is now so good, it's doing the job. Why would you want to upgrade to get some technical bullet point benefit when it's going to cost you so much money and you can't pay your grocery bill and your mortgage is going up every month anyway? It's going to be a forced contraction due to the effects of inflation and cost of living. So I think people will get used to not always having to buy the latest shiny thing because it's new. And once that happens, it's tough times ahead for the whole industry.
Well, and at that point, of course, the industry figures out a solution such as, you can't watch YouTube anymore unless you're on, version 27 of the phones or of your computer or whatever.
You get that forced push forward, and look, Bruce mentioned people haven't got the money, and even the people who do have the money, I'm luckily in a position of I can't buy whatever I want, but if I wanted to go and buy a Mavic 3 tomorrow, I could. Yet I still own the Mavic 2 Pro. Why is that? Why are the people who have the ability to go and do it not doing it? And that is because there's nothing exciting there for it. We're not looking at these products going, that would do it. The best buy today remains to be the A2S. Without doubt, the best quad overall today is that A2S from a value, from a sensor, from a performance point of view. It is interesting. Someone just said down there about the next revolution for FPV is open digital. I don't think it is.
3D, man. It's 3D.
3D with AI and blockchain.
I don't necessarily think open source has its place. And if we look at the RC control links, ExpressRS has taken over largely. But that isn't because it was better. It was because it was cheap. And what you had was loads of manufacturers making receivers for $10. And let's be realistic, what people love more than anything is cheap. And that's what's helped. And digital can't be cheap. Digital video can never be cheap.
I love cheap. I'm prepared to pay for it.
And I know Bruce is a big proponent of open source, and I am, but I don't think an open source digital video system will ever be a reality as a market leader.
But is an HD0 open source?
Not fully. It has open source elements. It's as close as we've got. Look at OpenHD. It's getting stuck under its own weight. It's a great product, but it's stuck because it can't get access. And here's the real problem with digital video, actually. The reason there isn't a big open source system is the second you go to any of the companies who make the chipsets you need and say, we want to make it open source, they won't even deal with you. And that is because most of the tech is very proprietary. And as such, they do not want to put that into the open domain. If we take how DJI work, not HD0, but Avatar HD, they're all based off LTE. They're all heavily licensed technologies that are not in the public domain, and no one wants to do that. And that's the only reason we've got an alternative is HD0, because Carl made it from the ground up.
Analog for the win.
Yeah,
silenced us all there, and then there just is there the market to?
And that's an interesting one. Someone said this week actually, because Avatar have announced they're going to do like a standalone HDMI transmitter and receiver. But what market is that for? How many people want that? How many? There are Chinese systems that can do it today, and I think we've reached a point in drones where the technology is just good now. Flight controllers don't burn out anymore. Even ESCs don't burn out now. You're
not trying hard enough, Ian.
Definitely.
So there's another element as well, though. If you look at the demographics, the 95%, I'll say 90% to be more conservative, of drone and RC aircraft people are male.
Yeah.
So there's a big market out there that the DJIs of the world have not yet addressed.
Pink goggles.
Let me just check. If I look at my audience, They're predominantly, I'm going to upset them now, fat and old like me, because I'm looking at the age groups. But if I look at gender, I have 1.3% female audience. Whoever you are, my female audience member, I really do appreciate you. but
Maybe
you
they
are
just
in
identify as
digits.
female. Have you thought of that?
Don't even go there. Don't even go.
I saw. Did you see the latest YouTube creator news? What YouTube want you to do now is to give them information on your sexuality, who you identify as, and any proclivities, so that they can better produce content for you. I mean, seriously? I mean, there are so many factors. Is that really an important factor? It's, oh my goodness.
I identify as a remote ID packet. There we go. That gets it out there.
Well, you spoof then, very easy.
It's just spoofing.
And actually, so you talk about that, and you
Well,
know,
you got to get young people in too. I mean, this when you had the flight test guy on, what's his name, Josh Bixler.
Josh Bixler.
He made a real point, and you know, I'd actually forgotten about it, but we've got to not forget about that. Like, you know, getting young people, boys and girls, into the hobby is essential, and it's tough, and but it doesn't mean we should give up.
But it's increasingly hard due to the regulatory framework. I mean, a kid now that might have been able to save his pocket money and buy a $200 ready-to-fly 250-gram foam pipe cub, it's going to have the added burden of standard remote ID built into it. The price goes up, and then there's there's all the hassles of STEM programs in the USA. 115,000 educational institutions want to run STEM programs, 4,000 freers. You know, it's just what are they?
Interesting point. You know, what have you guys noticed? I don't know if I'm wrong, but have you noticed the complete disappearance of posts about new stuff, new planes, new drones, new anything coming out? It used to be like there would be something every week with something new, and now there's nothing. Is this the impact of remote ID because the US is such a big market that people are not producing new planes to sell anymore?
It's a combination of factors, I think. It's the fact that it's now a very mature market, FPV and so forth, and we had that resurgence in the hobby when ARFs and foamies came along, electric power, that reinvigorated it, made it simpler and quicker and easier, and you could fly in smaller fields and so forth. And now that bubble or that peak is past, we're going down. We need something else to bring it up, but now we've got regulation and parents having to become an operator for their child and having to, you know, you've got age limits in some countries.
Every like you said, every foamy over 249 grams that's going to be sold in the United States as a ready to fly, as you pointed out, probably needs a standard remote ID included in it.
Should have been their best
worth it for the manufacturers to bother making them anymore.
Yeah, unless your horizon hobbies.
Yeah, and like, and I saw that. Like, I was heavily into fishing for a long time, port course fishing, pond fishing, and I've seen what we're seeing now come and go in that as well. Which is, you know, you see the youth exit, or not yet exit, the youth that were there turn into adults. But what you then see is a reduction in the new youth coming through behind that, and you see what you then start seeing is, and it's not, you know, look, RID is a problem, but the reality is kids want to be able to do something now because we live in the PlayStation generation where I can go on, turn it on, and it's got to be exciting. And look, FPV definitely has a way of bringing people in, because FPV gives something. If you say to a kid who's never, you know, not a teenager, but, you know, 10, 11, right, we're going to spend the next 40 hours building this aircraft, he'll be out the door before you've opened the box, right? And he's going to be there. But if you can get him to go, look, you know, this Star Wars game you've been playing, you can do this in real life. You know, you can now be in that and take it to the next level. But that needs places to do it. That needs people who want to share that info. Whilst RID doesn't end that, the whole mess around flight locations, freers, and all of this, and that, you know, that's where Josh has excelled, is building a safe place for people to come with mum, dad on a weekend.
He does a good job,
and he does an amazing job, you know. And look, it gives mum and dad a break as well, and that's a big thing today as well. You know, parents are working; no one can afford to be a single parent family working these days. If you know, and you want to spend time with your kids, but you know, you want to do it in a way that you can keep them entertained. You know, I got a 9-year-old boy and a 13-year-old daughter, and it's hard work keeping kids entertained these days. It's easy to say, you know, okay, people leave their kids on their iPads. Yeah, and I know why at times, because you're bloody knackered. You've spent all week working your ass off, and you've got to fight yourself to get out. But having places that you can take the kids, that mum and dad can learn something or enjoy, or mum or dad, or dad or dad, or mum and mum, whichever, covering every base.
Well done.
And we just don't have that over here in the UK.
But is it in the US? Because they've got their flight test place, but I mean, that's one place in the whole of the USA. Have they got other places that they're setting up or what? So again, if you don't live nearby, it's tough cheese for you.
Going to be a whole bunch of freers. Haven't you heard?
Yeah.
There's only 3,999 to choose from now, though, isn't there? Or places to go. If they've got a free,
yeah, but most of them will be subject to a gate fee. You've got to join the AMA, and a lot of kids won't have the money to join the AMA. And the parents will say, "Look, go and deal drugs on the street. It's safer. You're less likely to get into trouble than if you fly a drone.
You're not going to get arrested."
Yeah, and you'll make some pocket money.
But honestly, you know,
it's a job. It's a career.
To Ian's point, you know, entertaining your kids, what's easier than, you know, what I used to do is plug my kids into the TV set and, you know, they'd watch cartoons or whatever. Well, now you can plug them into, you know, a VR set of goggles, and they can do that FPV thing in the goggles sitting on the couch, and you don't have to drive them anywhere. That's even easier.
Put them in FPV goggles and watch them do the luge.
Wow. Yeah, but I think it's a bit more than just that. It's the with my teacher hat on now. What surprises me very much is the number of children that don't play with Lego even anymore. This, you know, we could say it's Rid's fault. We could say it's the rules.
Have you seen the price of Lego?
Yeah, to be fair. The only reason I know this is my boy bought one on the weekend. But again, they don't even want to do it. You know, my boy's 9 and he bought this Lego Bugatti. He's very big into cars. He had no interest in building the car. It was Dad's job to buld the car. What he wanted
your job
was
for the weekend, then.
Well, they ruined Lego.
It was my job to build the
They
Bugatti.
came out with all these, you know, the kits of, you know, you buy this thing to make one stupid model. That's ridiculous.
And then they
bring back Meccano.
Build whatever you want.
Bring back the Meccanos here. Of course, Ian, you'd have trouble with that because you're only used to Lambos, aren't you, Ian? Not
Lambos
Bugattis.
and
Yeah.
Bugattis, Lambos, all the usual stuff, Bruce.
Yeah.
You know, it's
that Welsh YouTubing lifestyle that we've all seen. Yeah, I think it's a bigger, it's a bigger thing than RID and regulators. And to a certain degree, I don't like a lot of the STEM stuff, even though that's what I teach, because it ends up with kits of meaninglessness being pushed
step 1, step 2, step 3. What do you learn?
It's not. We're not building engineers from the grassroots or getting the youngsters excited about.
And it is hard to get a minute. You know, my daughter's school, I was blown away. You know, my daughter went to secondary school a year and a bit ago now, and I remember going up there for the pre-evening, and like I walked into the technology department where they do all of the STEM stuff, and I was they couldn't get me out of there. I met the teacher, I got his email address, we talked, you know, they had 5 3D printers, laser cutters. I was like, if this had existed when I was in school, I'd have never have left. I'd have just stayed there. It would just, but my daughter has no interest, zero. You know, and like I've got, you know, I'm lucky I have access to a lot of stuff here. To get my kids involved in anything I'm doing here, they walk in, what are you doing, Dad? You know, let me sit down with you, show it. I'm bored, gone. It's impossible. It's really hard to get, because there's so much for them to do now. You know, they can just go, I'm going to go 10 minutes on my iPad, or I'm going to go and play with the dog and play football in the garden. And it's kids don't get bored anymore. And I think that's part of the problem. It's
good to note too, also, that you think FPV is bringing a lot of young people in, but if you look at the demographics of the FPV crowd, a lot of them like 40, 50, 60. Yeah. They're not young, they're not kids. So I think, but every time I put goggles on a kid and taken them for a fly, they've been blown away. But then there's nothing to follow. There's no local hobby store. The parents aren't interested. They don't have the money, and so it's like, well, it was an opportunity, but we can't capitalize on it.
Why can't they go on Amazon and buy it? They don't have to go
Because
out.
Amazon here is crap.
The
We're a little backwards. It comes from Australia and in New Zealand. I mean, to buy a freestyle drone, even a cheap, you buy something like this, you're looking at $600 or $700 New Zealand dollars. No kids have got the money for that. It's too expensive for them.
Yeah.
God, we are down in the world, aren't we? And meanwhile, Tim the Plane Man is building an RQ7 from a balsa kit in the old-fashioned way we would all have done back in the day.
No, he's not, because I don't see him peeling the glue off his fingers like we used to.
Oh, I was totally doing that. If you haven't seen it, maybe I didn't record it, but yep, that will be happening. Of course, I'll also be putting an RD Pilot flight controller in it as well.
Are you using balsa cement? Kids today, they use CA and all these things. They don't know how good they got it.
Some aliphatic glue.
No, it's not quite the same. It's a bit high tech. Balsa cement, that was the way to do it. Even made our own with acetone and sheets of acetate. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah. Plus, there's the high you get for the smell.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the first kind of dope, long before marijuana was a thing.
Yeah,
and Ian, you're saying
that's the demonetizing shot there.
You said you said when I first came into something, a gram can't make that much difference. You try carrying a gram of heroin around, see how much difference it makes.
I'm just waiting for him to name the BBC presenter and finish it all off. So.
Yeah, I kind of missed that. But isn't there a second delegation coming up for that one?
I think they're coming in faster than yeah.
Oh, how do I get it to show up right? Yeah,
you get a wider lens.
Just a big. It really is.
It's a bigger camera.
Crazy.
Is that plywood? Looks mainly plywood, is it?
It's actually mostly plywood so far. A couple of pieces of balsa. This one's actually balsa here, but yeah, almost everything is plywood so far, and a couple of sheets of balsa in there. It will be sheeted. The entire thing will be sheeted in balsa. The sheeting is down there, but I'm going to put all the electronics in first, and it is so much fun. Like, I mean, yeah. How do you get kids to understand that? But it is recreating my childhood, and I just love that feeling.
I think it's interesting you say that. That's a big market now, which is the 40-somethings who are past the family bit if they had kids young, or they didn't have kids, or they have a good job where they can now start pouring money.
40, I wish.
Back. Yeah, but you do see it. I used to do a bit with a motorcycle dealership, and one of the big brands in the UK completely changed their marketing to the 45 onwards successful people to, because they're the people now who want to go back to their childhood.
Midlife crisis.
The midlife crisis, but you've got a bit of money and time, and now, I've got the ability to do this. And I do see Marcy modeling and maybe FPV in all parts of drones heading that way. I think when you look at the people who buy Mavics and stuff, they fly them a few times, they crash it, they get themselves into a bit of trouble. I'm not sure out of every 10 how many of those people are still doing it a year later. That would be a really interesting stat, wouldn't it? Of every Mini 3 sold, how many of them are still doing it a year later?
Or not down the bottom of the cupboard. Yeah.
Or
in a lake or on the top of a tree.
Beside the abdominizer and all the other exercise gear you bought with a view of getting fit and healthy, never used.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if it's 1 in 10.
And that's always very naughty the way the FAA keep adding the numbers to the number of drones that are there. They never subtract. They only add the ones that they never take them off the register.
Speaking of numbers, good to see that in Switzerland only half the people have signed up for registration. Good on them.
No, it is very interesting all around. I was going to say something, but it can't have been all that important. And Barton, it's a kit. Oh, Lego, going back to that Lego thing, and Lego for grown-ups, as John's saying, that's cool. There's a term for that when your children have stopped playing with it and they're off being at university and stuff like that, and mum or dad find the Lego again. When it's refound, you're coming out of the dark ages, apparently. That's coming out of the dark ages, and then adults spend an absolute fortune on Lego bits and stuff and all those Burj Khalifas. But I completely agree with Don that all these made-up sets are getting rid of the imagination or the freedom to imagine and create more stuff, because they keep them in the same models, don't they? They don't want to break them up. and they've got all these special bits that don't really turn into a house. But anyway,
Yeah, even stuff like 3D printers. I've been talking to a lot of people with 3D printers recently, and I would say that probably over 75% of them have never designed anything. They just download and print, and it's not really teaching you much, is it?
No, and that was the bit for me that was amazing with the 3D printer. That you needed a bracket for a quad or a plane you were building, and you're like, I need something to hold that there. And you could go on, I still use 123 Design and one of the older design suites because I'm just au fait with it. Go on there, make something, move it around. It's not pretty, it's not perfect. Slam it in the SD card, put it in, and then it used to be 3 hours later after trying to level the bed 18 times and it not sticking, you might get something out. Whereas today it just works.
The APSB alarm.
Is that alarm
Has he put a case on it?
Yes, I'm just adding some spoofing software.
I was going to say, you're going to put in the SP32.
Yeah, you can do it with the Raspberry Pi 4.
Well.
Yeah.
That's not doing anything like that right now at all.
No. There's no app that you could use to show us whether it was.
Let's just have a look. What is going on an app? Let me just open this here. Oh yeah.
And did you see that Karen that complained about the person flying a drone near a beach? I put a tweet up on it. Oh, this woman complained. She rang the police because she saw a drone near the beach, and there was swimming pools, and she called the operator a nasty person. And I'm thinking, how much easier remote ID will make this for them? How much simpler will it be when they can get their phone out and go over and actually berate the person directly and tear the transmitter from their hands because they're obviously a bad actor?
Plainly.
It is. I don't think you'll see it on there, but it is. Yeah, there's a drone in the air. Look, as we speak.
It's frightening how easy it is, isn't it?
Is it the one? And it's the one on your desk.
And it's an Express LRS transmitter is actually what it is, but it's got an ESP32 in this, so you can do anything you want at that point.
Scary. On that happy note, I have to run because apparently there's something horrible happening in the family. So
oh dear. Oh, okay. All right. Hopefully it's not too horrible. Thanks very much for joining us. I think
they've lost their drone. So
that is a tragedy.
Yes.
Horrible. Anyway.
All right. Look after yourself.
Don.
So good. We must all go, in fact. Cheers, Don. Thanks very much.
How do I get out of this? Oh, there it is.
You don't
leave studio.
No, sorry.
You're not allowed to leave.
Yeah. What's that? Hotel California, isn't it? Yes, that's what came to mind.
You were saying about forced upgrades. I think the reason I couldn't get onto the thing before is I'm using a computer over there that's got an older browser. And I think I haven't updated the browser there for quite a while. Now they've updated the software for StreamYard and it won't work with my browser anymore. So I'm going to have to go and I update my Linux probably once every 4 years. I moved to the next long-term supported version, so I'm going to have to do that and reinstall everything. And
Windows, Bruce, come to the mod.
Come on, seriously. If you leave a Windows system updated for that period of time, it becomes a host of viruses and worms.
To be fair, actually, I moved back to Windows a few years ago.
Was that Tim?
I'm on a Mac.
Yeah, well, I was a Mac man for a very long time, and I still am.
You left it outside.
Until I left one of them outside. There was that one I left outside. But yeah, I've been a Windows guy just because of I need it really for the channel. The Mac doesn't give me what I need anymore from the connectivity, from the ability to work with a lot of other systems and stuff, and the recording stuff I do. But yeah, Windows is a lot better than it was. A lot better.
It's Nagware. It's turned into Nagware. Windows is Nagware. Do you want to upgrade to Windows 11? We're going to upgrade. You're in the middle of something. Doesn't matter. We're going to install a new update for you. Please stand by. And I don't need that. Linux does what I tell it. It doesn't tell me what it's going to do.
It's what is interesting. You talk about news earlier, Gary. I think the only thing I think really that's around the corner now in the drone space is this Blue UAS thing again. There's still the developments around that. It's still bubbling away a little bit in the background. You had the Trappy thing. I don't know for those who saw, which is quite interesting. With
I was going to ask you. That's what I was going to ask you. TBS is back. I didn't know they'd gone, but they're back.
And it does sound like they've been through a lot of problems. To be fair, and it's an interesting story because Trappy's a very big name who's been around a very long time, and TBS. I started in FPV with TBS gear, so I'm pleased. I just hope they get their crap together, frankly, and grow up. And they need to start talking. It's no good. You can't be insular as a company unless you're someone like DJI.
Are they still in Hong Kong?
Yeah, still in. Yeah,
can't help.
Yeah, you can't be insular though. You can't. They don't really talk to creators. They don't talk to, outside their little community. And I think when you've got companies like Radio Master and others who are ridiculously active in the creator space, and look, is this a good or a bad thing? They will send 30 radios out to people, maybe plus, to review. Now, you can have an opinion on, are those people giving genuine reviews? Are they not? Like people will always accuse you, whatever. But the reality is they are putting product in hand to get people to talk about it. If the product was bad, at the end of the day, the thousands of people who go on to buy it are going to take to Twitter, Facebook, and all of these places and say, actually, they all lied. The reality is someone like Radio Master are now making really good products, and they're really pushing the community and sending them out there for people to talk about. Now, you can make the best product in the world, but if no one's talking about it, people aren't going to know about it. And that's the problem TBS have today. They need to start talking to people. And, like Bruce, Bruce still is one of the biggest channels in FPV. People do forget that Bruce is, I'd love to see RC model reviews again talking about some of this stuff.
Stay tuned, Grasshopper.
Yeah, but yeah, they're not a brand that talk to people, are they, Bruce? They don't really communicate TBS.
No, I think they like being a somewhat elite and closed group, because when people buy, they're buying some cachet with having TBS.
Yeah, you just can't behave like that when you got Radio Master, because they'll just eat you alive, and they are.
Yes, they will.
Mind you, still use my Tango 2 every time I go flying.
Yeah, and what that video has shown, the interest is huge. The interest in TBS is massively.
Radio Master smart the products. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They are. Companies are definitely having to make something unusual to get their products out there now. Oh,
Bruce got one of them. He's a shill. He got one. I didn't get
one
of them.
He is a shill. Yeah, he is. Yeah, but at least you don't shill seats. That's the other.
No. I don't anymore. I wish this. I probably made more money off this. I probably made more money off that year. I did very well. The year of COVID lockdown, where everyone had to buy desks and chairs, and what that was the year that everyone got to put it on their company expenses because they couldn't go to the office, and the businesses were going, just get what you need so you can work. And people were going, am I going to order 150 quid chair, or am I going to order a 500 quid chair? I'll take the 500 pound one, please. I did very well.
Oh dear, we are definitely ranting and talking nonsense now. One last thing before I go. Is anyone else threading? I've opened up.
I have joined. I haven't posted.
Look for you then.
I am on.
I'm not going to use a phone. I'm not going to use a phone to do that. I use a desktop. I sit here all day in front of a computer screen. Why am I going to use such an ergonomically ridiculous device as a smartphone to type messages?
True. Yeah, no, very true. It's quite interesting that it's not filling up, and that's largely because the EU's not there, I think. But it's filling up 100 million.
Have you seen that? Have you read the terms and conditions of use? They have the right to do so much stuff, get so much data off your phone.
Huge,
You'd have to be an idiot.
You'd
have to be an idiot to use it on your main phone.
What I actually liked about Threads was how easy it was to set up if you had Instagram. My God, did they nail that? If you had Instagram, you just went in, hit the button, and it just brought everything over. That was clever. Twitter is in precarious water.
Yeah, but now you can't delete your Threads profile without deleting your Instagram account.
You can't, but
there we are. Well, on that, so SES News is over there. Well, it's interesting to see what happens. So I'm going to look for Ready is the Future as soon as I finish. I'm sure that's a handle you used. It remains for me to say it's like and subscribe Tim the Plane Man's Mac member channel. Watch the progress of that RQ7, and we all know where Bruce is. And well, thanks for joining us. Thanks very much for joining us. And Divya, wherever you might
Gary,
be in the
Gary, are you going to get hold of the FAA to appear here so we can ask them about RID?
I've asked him, and he's told me to.
No, the PR people, he gave you an address that they're the front end
He
for
did. All right, all right.
Get
I
hold of
will,
them. We'd
Fred,
like
I
to
will.
have a genuine
All right.
engagement with them on this thing. It'd get a lot of views then.
Yeah, maybe. All right, dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. Thanks very much for coming along. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT next week. Don't forget, go out, buy your ESP32 and flood the sky with drones. Cheers for now. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.